What is chainmail? Well, chainmail is a fabric woven from steel rings. It consists of many steel rings woven together to produce a durable substance, known as chainmail. Chainmail was used in the Middle Ages as a source of protection, which was more efficient than plated armor. The downside to chainmail was that it has microscopic holes, and chainmail's weaknesses were exploited by the longbow. The longbow could penetrate through chainmail. Nevertheless, chainmail is a very cool fabric. It can be woven today with power tools, thankfully. Back in the Middle Ages, it was very difficult to make chainmail because the wire had to be pounded from blocks of steel. Today, I will be showing you how to make chainmail. Let's start off with the wire. A gauge is what determines the thickness of a wire. For this, I am using 14 gauge. I think this is a perfect balance between malleability and strength. I bought a lot of 14 gauge wire to use for this project, but any amount of wire can be used. So what you will need a wire of a range of between 10 to 16 gauge. You will need a setup. I'll show you how to make this setup later. You will need bolt cutters, small or large, and you will need pliers, and of course a container to hold the rings. Now, let's start off with this wire spool. This spool is what I'll be using today for our demonstration. Now, I built this out of a plank of wood, a steel dowel of the inner diameter that you would like your ring to be. In this case, I used a metal dowel of an inner diameter of 7/16 of an inch. I use metal because it is more durable than wood. I did try it out with wood and it snapped immediately. Then I have a series of eye-rings to guide the wire. Before, I had an eye-ring right here, but that caused too much friction, so I just added one eye-ring right here, and then a spool would be on a dowel, which led the wire to this metal dowel. For this, you will need many pieces of 2x4, placed in the formation that makes this structure right here. By intuition, you will be able to make this. You will need 2 legs, you will need a base, and then you will need the vertical pieces that will remove it from the floor, reducing friction. You will also need a guide. You don't need a guide necessarily, but I find it very useful. This guide is used to guide this wire onto the dowel. You will make it by connecting an eye-ring to a 2x4 section with a hole in the middle to allow the dowel to pass through. You will then need 2 eye-rings to allow the dowel to stay in place. For this, I ground down certain sides of the dowel so that it would fit into a power drill. For this, I would have 2 step stools and a wooden dowel that will hold this spool in place while it rotates and feeds the wire to this machine. With this machine, you put the wire into this hole, first into this eye-ring, then into this hole. Then as the power drill spins this metal dowel, you will guide the wire to form a full spring. These are some examples of springs right here. I have made many springs because I am currently making a very big chainmail project. I'll show you at the end, so stay tuned. These springs are, essentially many rings in a chain. This chain will allow you to cut rings loose with bolt cutters. Now, you can buy any size of bolt cutters and any price. These are very efficient small bolt cutters, and these not so much. I continued upgrading from relatively cheap bolt cutters to better to efficient. The reason I did this is because after cutting rings, my hands were on the verge of bleeding. And so with these, one solution was I attached towels to them, which would offer padding, but that still wasn't enough, so I upgraded to these. With these, you will cut rings off the spring, like so. As you can see, these are 2 good rings. Now, these rings will be put into your ring container. You will want to cut all of the springs to have enough rings for your project. But chainmail springs don't always go as planned. As you can see here, there is a coil that is just too messed up to get anything from it. So in this case, I would just throw it away. But normally, you could cut away like certain parts, like for example, this whole thing you would cut away. And then there are some little pieces where you could get rings, but that's for this coil, it's just not worth the effort. Then you will need your pliers. I have these pliers because they have more torque and allow me to make the chainmail with ease. Before I started with these, but again, they hurt my hands after making like square feet of chainmail. So let's start with making 2x4 chainmail. You will need to start by taking 5 rings. 1, 2, and 5. You will close 4 of them. Then you will have another ring, which you will open. Like so, with a gap sufficient to fit one of these closed rings. Then you will place those 4 closed rings onto the open ring. Then you will close this open ring to form a proper seal. With this, you will lay a series of 4 or however many you want down onto your work surface. You will want to align these with the same pattern. As you can see here, I already connected 3, but you can see that these are on top of these. And you can see that these are on the bottom of these. So you want to align it so that these are on top and these are on top, so they have the same pattern. Then, with these 2, you want to create the same pattern that you have in one of these. So these must be on top of these, since these are on top of those. So you place them on top. Then you will take another ring, and you will open it. With this ring, you will create a unition between these 2 loops formed by the intersection of the rings. You can see there are 2 gaps right there. You will take this ring right here, this open ring, and loop it through those 2 gaps. As you can see, I have it looped through. Now you'll take your pliers and close this ring. Then you will form an array of these connections. As you can see, I have 1 large connection and 2 smaller ones. You will want to connect it in the same manner that you did before when making a vertical connection. So right here, I recreate the pattern all the way through. As you can see, this ring is on the bottom, this ring is on the bottom of this one, and the pattern goes on. Now, I will want to grab a ring, and then I will open it once again. Then I will connect the 2 gaps. Then, once it's in between those 2 holes, you will once again close it. Right. Now we have 2 series of 4. To connect these, you will want to do the same thing. As you can see, this ring is on top of this ring, and this ring is on the bottom of this ring. You want to do the same and make it so that the pattern continues throughout this. And then align each ring to its corresponding partner. Then you will want to open another ring. With this ring, you will continue this repetition throughout the whole chain. You will want to, once again, connect the 2 gaps of the corresponding rings. You can see that 1 unit is the same throughout the whole pattern. Now you will want to continue doing this until you have connected all the gaps together, and you will have a square of chainmail. I have followed through with my steps and connected every single gap. Now we have a nice little piece of chainmail. It's pretty cool. And you can continue this pattern, weaving together vertical and horizontal rows to make a large array of chainmail. In this example, I've made a different type of chainmail called Persian chainmail. I do not have time to go over this today, but you can find many YouTube videos on how to do this. Then, I also made a Persian chain, which is pretty cool. And you can also make king chainmail. This is an example where, as I will demonstrate, you run through a ring and double it up. So you follow the path of one ring with another. And then you close it up. And as you can see, it mimics the bottom ring perfectly. And you would do this for every single ring to get this. Something that I have used with King Chainmail is making patterns. Here, I got a different color of chainmail rings. This is jeweler's brass, the type of metal. I bought this off of theringhalord.com, just in case you plan on doing this and you do not want to make the rings yourself. You could probably buy them for cheaper off theringhalord.com. Here, I have made a pattern using the gold rings. It's basically just making many of these and kinging it with different colors of rings. I'm currently working on a large project. It's very heavy. It's a shirt. And I followed a pattern that I've made myself, and I've measured. And I plan on making this pattern throughout this shirt. This has been Making Chainmail with me, Jake. Thank you for listening.